So good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining this INOAUG's Xplore webinar. So as you know, INOAUG is the Indian Oracle Apex user group, which is world's first Apex-only user group. And today we have two wonderful speakers. So once again, thanks for joining among your tight project deliveries. So quickly about the agenda, like this small introduction. And the first session is going to be the statutory compliance for Apex organizations by Shyam, and followed by the Q&A. Again, after that, we are going to have a small update about the INOAUG by Natarajan, and he will also introduce the speaker for the next second session. That is going to be the best practices and security in a nutshell by Jay. Finally, we'll have a Q&A session. So the total session we are planning for just 1 hour, and we'll keep up the timings strictly. Okay. So about Shyam, like he is director of the consulting services, of SeerTree Global Service. And he's a qualified chartered accountant and a certified information systems auditor. We have more privilege to have him today. Like he has wonderful 16 years of experience in the IT consulting, and he has successfully delivered Apex solutions to various business verticals. So today we are going to hear his success stories, how he made a big confidence for the end users. So he takes care of the project delivery and pre-sales activities as well. So he's an energetic young man. So we'll welcome him. So thanks everyone, and over to Shyam.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. So, and thank you for calling me young as well. So that's very energizing this evening. Very good evening, everyone. For the rest of this community, it's let me just make sure my video is on here. So that all right. Thank you very much. So it's indeed a pleasure and honor to be able to speak to the brightest brains in the industry, and it's also an honor, to be able to talk to this, really knowledgeable, group of people. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you once again. So let me go straight into the presentation here. Let me share my screens. All right. So I'll quickly give a background of the context of what the presentation is today, right? So I'm sure there are some really good technical presentations that will follow downstream. The objective that I'm going to present here today is to set the context of Oracle Apex. How does Oracle Apex as a technology gels extremely well with the business requirements in the current context and current business world that we live in? So Oracle as a technology, as we all understand, I think I'll be preaching to the choir if I say some of these things, because Oracle Apex is a low-code framework. The time it takes to market a solution using Oracle Apex is very low. And this is exactly the reason I stumbled upon Oracle Apex a few years ago. So interestingly, I think back in 2016 or 2017, so there was this customer, in the US. We were discussing in a call. They explained how they use spreadsheets and macros and really complex calculation routines to arrive at incentive compensation for their employees, to arrive at the brokerage that they pay to external representatives. So it was Friday evening India time, Friday morning their time, we got off a call. They were explaining the problem statements with the spreadsheets and things like that. So by Wednesday of the following week, we were able to turn around and show them a solution using Oracle Apex. And the first thing the customer said, I have never seen anything get delivered this fast. In all these years of dealing with information technology people, they said, you guys give us a project plan first, you talk about schedules, and then you show us the product. But here is a team, or here is a technology we spoke about on Friday, and come Wednesday, you guys are able to actually show me a working product. So that was my first tete-a-tete with Oracle Apex as a technology, and the love story started since then, and it continues till date. So one of my job role, Oracle connoisseur, Oracle Apex connoisseur, or I can say Oracle Apex practitioner. That's really how I would like to call it, because I'm constantly looking out for the opportunities to place Apex in the midst of an Oracle enterprise solution that a customer is running, right? And to set the background of the presentation today, what I'm going to really talk about is how Apex has helped organizations adopt the legal and right. Next my presentation. Once again, I thank you, and I hope I'm audible to everybody. And all right. So going to the agenda slide. Let's go to the agenda slide. So Richard, I just want to make sure maybe one of you can confirm is my audio everything coming through okay?
Yeah, you are audible, Shyam. You can make the presentation mode in the PPT.
Perfect. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. So the agenda is we're going to talk about achieving regulatory compliance using Oracle Apex. Now, what is regulatory compliance? It's a compliance with any statutory legislations, a compliance with the law of the land where the company is doing business, right? So we're going to talk about different use cases where, because Apex is a low-code technology, because Apex is extremely easy to adopt, build, and use, it has become a go-to choice of the customers, to build applications that helps them to comply with the regulatory framework, right? So I'm going to share 3 stories in about 20-25 minutes of time that have been given. The 3 stories have one happy ending, right? The happy ending is they happily Apex ever after, like the customers Apex happily ever after, right? That's what we're talking about. So what are the 3 stories, right? Story number 1 is, so there was this company, business supplying manpower to construction companies, to airports, to hospitals, to wherever it required blue collar workers, they were in the business supplying that. So the manpower agency, the law of the land mandates a lot of regulations at them. The workers can only work 10 hours. If they work more than 10 hours, there's an overtime. They have to have a mandatory off. They cannot work 2 consecutive Fridays. There are, a plethora of laws that this company has to comply. Now, they're using one of the off-the-shelf ERP product, which is a wonderful ERP product. Everything worked well. It is good from a payroll calculation perspective. But how would you bridge the gap when there are the nuances of compliance, like, you can't take it to Fridays? I mean, ERPs are not meant to handle issues like this. So this is where we completely built the entire validation framework of employees' timesheet using Oracle Apex. So the end product, the end story was there would be biometrics. Employees go, swipe in their cards, use their identification, they authenticate themselves. The information from the server is loaded onto a bunch of Oracle tables. They are visualized using Oracle Apex. The entire massaging of data, the entire normalization of the data takes place using Oracle Apex. And all those records that don't comply statutorily are thrown out for somebody's review. Somebody can correct it. There is approval workflow. And the entire payroll technology built in and deliver the same solution in traditional ERP in the same amount of time and same amount of energy that was spent. So that is the story number 1. So I'm going to go down, show you some screens, talk about the technology touch points in just a few minutes. The story number two is a pretty recent story of a large internet service providers and cable TV operator in India. So it's a very familiar name, very popular name. Most of you would probably be their customers anyways. The problem they had was with the introduction of GST in India, the movement of any goods or any commodity from one location to another location, from one state to another state, requires a tax to be paid, requires tax to be charged, reported in a certain way. Most of us are familiar with GST legislation. Them to amend, modify, enhance their off-the-shelf ERP system. So the entire gamut of movement of assets from one location in India, from Nungambakam in Chennai to Bhiwandi go down in Mumbai, right? If an asset has to move, the entire life cycle, the journey of the asset was managed using Oracle Apex with full compliance to the GST regulations that is in place, right? So that's the story number two, and we'll talk about some of the interesting technology touch points that we encounter in that. The last story is Karur in India, right? It's a very large manufacturing organization. Sorry, Salem in Tamil Nadu, very large manufacturing company. So, Government of India recently, as recently as Jan 2020, notified that all companies having more than 100 crores of turnover are supposed to generate invoices electronically and send this invoice electronically, digitally to their National Informatics Center servers, bring back a token called e-invoice number, we call it TRN number, stamp that invoice number on your every single invoice document that goes out of your office in support of the movement of goods. Also print a QR code on the invoices. This was made mandatory effective July 2020. Of course, with the COVID and other things, the actual implementation has gotten pushed. However, it was notified in Jan 2020 and companies had to be ready with this huge exercise by early July 2020. Most organizations in India looked at a low code, quick solution that could talk to their ERPs and also talk to the National Informatics Center service, is able to bridge the gap, do what it needs to be done to stay compliant with the statutory regulations. oracleapex helped multiple organizations. I'm going to talk about one example of one of the organizations and how beautifully the solution fits into this, right? So 3 stories, one ending, and we'll go some of the screens and start talking about the technology, how the pieces were put together. All right. So as I said, so I'll go right in. So the first story is about the labor law regulations, right? So as I said, the labor laws can be extremely complex. They are there to protect the workers, who are working for the company, right? Especially if you take a Middle East context, there are a lot of expat workers, people from different parts of the world travel there. So the labor laws are out there to protect them. Because the labor laws are protective in nature, the compliance of these are enforced very strictly, and the compliance and there are huge fines for non-compliance. So the companies do not want to take a chance here, right? So how Apex helped this organization is the solution that was built using Oracle Apex, primarily for uploading timesheets. It is timesheets, imagine, of 9,300 or 9,200 workers every single month. The timesheets would come in, get loaded into Oracle. There would be multiple validations running on the top of the timesheets that were uploaded. Are the timesheets complete? Now, there should be time recorded Monday to Friday. One day is missing. There should either be an absence record or there should be some other, evidence supporting his work. If none of those exist, it's an incomplete timesheet. Now, there are rules like, did somebody put a time for 24 hours? What if there was a swipe in and there was no swipe out, right? So things of this nature, this incomplete data was validated step by step using the PLSQL layer, right? And it was beautifully visualized using Apex. So as soon as the timesheets are uploaded, within minutes, about 9,300 timesheets would get in, and it will pop out exactly those 100 or 200 timesheets which are not good, which do not comply with the regulations, or do not comply with their internal company policies, or are incomplete in nature, right? So different types of employees. The solution, because it is so easy to write the code, we started off with blue collar workers. Suddenly they said, oh, let's do the create one more page, write some more set of rules that will apply for white collar workers. There were different calculation routines, and calculation, I think you all will agree with me that it's so easy, within the Apex framework, to write some of the complex calculation routines, for overtimes, for weekend working, for public holidays. All of these calculations were beautifully written from within Apex. And the best part is this can be made modular. You don't have to really hard code things in your code. You can create another master page within Apex, let the master data be maintained within Apex, and also read from the master data, and let some of your calculation engine use the data from there, right? So and there was leaves. Leaves is the most complex thing, I'll tell you, in a typical payroll setting. There will be types of leaves, right? So a simple rule: if I'm a person applying for a leave which I am not eligible for, right? So the system should right away reject me. So all of these rules, I can easily recall about close to 300 to 400 rules for the timesheets and leaves were beautifully defined, implemented within the Oracle Apex framework. Right. So moving on, just quickly show you a feel of what this looks like. Right. So we started off with a module called timesheet, and the customer was so happy with what all Apex can do. We kept on adding more and more and more tabs. Now, perhaps I'm very happy to say that most of their, I would say about 40 to 50% of their business logic now resides within Oracle Apex, and everything is processed here and then sent to their core ERP. Right. So some of the screens. So I'm giving you a very simple example how Apex can make it rule based. This is an interactive grid. Most of you are aware of interactive grid. We have a law that says the normal hours an employee works is 8 hours. Right. However, the customer will get billed for 10 hours. You see how I can make a differentiation in a single interactive grid, for one row for invoice and one row for payroll. I can also have rules that says during a special festival season, you can dial down, you can work for 6 hours because people are fasting. So I can put in what is the minimum hours. So everything is modular, everything is framework driven, everything is maintained as master data. And down here, we've maintained certain overtime rules. If it's Friday, multiply his pay with 1.5 times. If it's a public holiday, multiply it 2.5 times. If it's a regular day, he works more than 8 hours, it's 1.25. So all of these pieces have been very quickly built in. As you can see, any seasoned Apex developer, this page will perhaps takes you half a day to put it together and then complete it, right? So that's the beauty of this. All right. So this is the best part. Now, there were many, many types of timesheets. As I said, there are 9,000 employees. They're all different types of people. There are, hourly workers. There are workers who are on a monthly contract. So, and that format of timesheets was different. So what we did here, and this is one of my favorites. I'm pretty sure you've done this, or you can leverage this idea too. A lot of times when you give an option to upload in Oracle Apex, everybody's instantly looking for, oh, give me a format. And then an IT person, oh, here's a format, users to upload. So what we had done a little differently is give them a hyperlink right here. You see that sample hourly timesheet or sample monthly timesheet, which is highlighted in blue. You click that, it will download a spreadsheet template onto your computer, and then you can fill that. So the user using this application is no longer needing to reach out for a specific format. We have put the formats right there. Anytime the format changes, we upload in the Apex application, and then they get the latest template. So this way you keep the templates current for them to use and for them to upload, so that people are not, you don't have to put it in a shared directory, or you don't have to have people reach out to somebody for get this. So where templates, one of the leave the link there for people to download. Yeah. All right, moving on. So this is a typical data load wizard process. So we would use this to select the files that they would receive from different sources, different sites, and we would simply upload the data. The validation layer here is where we have written all the rules that will tell you if a particular timesheet was not compliant with the validations in place. Successfully uploaded, we would create a batch ID, load the data into the tables, we will tell you if there is an error, so on and so forth. And then end of the process, we would have every single employee's timesheet for every day normalized, corrected, and in this fashion. They can simply download it, or this is directly fed to their traditional ERP, which would then use this for processing payroll, right? So right from upload to the processing, applying all the statutory rules was handled seamlessly using oracleapex, combination of integrated grids, combination of data wizards, and combination of good PLSQL procedures written in the backend, right? And also a bit of HTML help that will allow us to download the timesheets, did it for us in this particular story, right? So I'll pause here. I think Richard mentioned the Q&A towards the end, so I'll keep going if that's okay. And if there are questions, you can please note it down, and I'll be happy to answer them towards the end of the session. All right. Excellent. So story number 2, along the line. So moving on, I think just to recap, the context is statutory compliance using Oracle Apex technology, how quickly, how easily we can build solutions that will help customers quickly adopt new laws or changes in existing laws, right? GST law, we're all aware, it's been a few years now. I think everybody understands a bit or two over GST. We all pay GST when we buy products from this was one of the legislations on their face, right? So this was one of the biggest changes that they had to very quickly, that already had some kind of an Oracle landscape, quickly looked up to Oracle Apex, and this is where it was very, it's the right thing to do. Already have an Oracle database, you've got some kind of an application running on Oracle database. Why touch your running application? Let's build something on Apex, let's feed it back into your application. So that's been our philosophy wherever we advocated Oracle Apex, right? So as I said, one of the largest internet service providers, cable TV operators, wanted to move their modems and routers and set-top boxes from one location in India, in my example from Nugambakam in Chennai to all the way to Kalyan area in Mumbai, right? A warehouse there. This movement attracts GST. This movement attracts e-invoicing now. This movement attracts an e-way bill. Now, they had two choices. They could go to their ERP, customize a bunch of forms, processes, rewrite the whole thing, or they could simply plug in a small database, implement the pages, the forms, the code using Oracle Apex, and feed it back into their ERP. And that's what they did. And so what the solution helped them? It helped them, a person sitting in Chennai here is able to see list of all the set-top boxes that he has in his location. And all he had to do was, oh, I select the set-top box 234, 500 of these units are going from Chennai to Mumbai. Selects that, selects a destination location, submits it, right? So this submission triggers a bunch of interfaces back into their ERP, creates an invoice, does the GST calculations, does everything. All that already happens in their ERP. All we do is prepare the data in the right format that the ERP can support and push the data. And the same Apex application on the receiver side, the guy sitting in Mumbai, for him to receive the products, it would show this transfer from Chennai as an expected receipt. So he can go in and acknowledge that the set-top boxes were received. Once he receives, there is a AP invoice, a supplier invoice generated in his ERP automatically from Apex. So what we have done essentially is we've used a bunch of pages to facilitate movement of assets. Behind the scenes, we have complied with GST by creating a customer invoice and a supplier invoice with GST. That in a nutshell is what we have done. So this, as opposed to doing something inside your ERP, was something was a very successful strategy for us, and customer today is extremely happy with the solution, right? So a page would look like this. There would be a different requests, where their assets would be listed. What is the source location? What is the destination location? And there was approval workflows built using Apex. I think some of you may have used it. So if I create a transaction in Apex in a database, I can use approval workflow within Apex. There are packages, standard packages available within Apex to send emails, to send notifications for approvals. And once they are approved, we can manage the movement of the transaction. Excellent. So moving on, like I said, finally, last but not the least, I think we are closing in on the time, so I'll make sure. So the last story is about a recent legislation in India called e-invoicing, which was mandatory for companies having turnover of 100 crores and above. So like I said, like every piece of invoice that goes from this company, typically a business-to-business transaction, right? Every piece. So this was a company that would manufacture automobile. They would manufacture some, right? So automobile company. So if they have to ship 500 of their motors from their location in Tamil Nadu to somewhere in Delhi or Bombay, right? The paper invoice alone is not enough. It's not enough for you to pass the checks or checkpoints. It is important that their system generates an invoice, sends it through an interface to the NIC server, was acknowledged for completeness, sends you back a with an invoice compliance. So just to give you a perspective of what our end product in Apex look like, this is what our end product in Apex look like. This is an electronic invoice as per the Government of India e-invoicing format. You see on the right, you have a QC code, fully scannable QC code. This and the entire and the NIC servers give you back the IRN number. That IRN number is critical. That is what needs to be printed on every invoice. This is done to check the frauds, because a lot of invoices are against fake invoices. There are lots of scams coming out. So government wants to plug the revenue loophole. They said every invoice you send from company to company has to be routed through our servers. And this IRN number means it's a genuine invoice. It's not a fake invoice anymore. All right. So this entire framework was managed within Apex. So the screen here tells you, this screen is where it's a simple Oracle table, and the report is on Apex on the top of Oracle table. The data would get pulled into Apex every 30 minutes as you keep generating invoice from your ERP systems. The data is pulled into Apex, and the data is then sent to the National Informatics Center service right from Apex by using a simple, we whitelisted their URLs. We have something called UTL HTTP package in Oracle database. We use UTL HTTP package. We call the REST API provided by Government of India. We authenticate ourselves. We get the authenticated token. We send the token back along with the invoice data, invoice number, who the customer, what is the from address, what is the to address, what is the amount of transaction, what is the tax. Pretty much the entire information is formatted in a JSON format, sent to the servers. Message is brought back, the message is read, and the message is printed on this row as IRN number, and the QC code, what they send back in a base 64 format, is stored in the database, and it is printed back on their invoices. So this table has inbound from ERP, and it also has a push to an external service, and the entire ERN numbers are updated. And this is what the format looks like. When you view against when you click on view against this transaction ID, it would open up something like this. This has all the information the customer needs, the government needs to confirm that the invoice has been raised correctly. All right. So some graphs and bar charts to go with to go with what the status is, how many transactions are in errors, so on and so forth. Right. So the key thing I want to kind of, with these three stories, I think what is that I want to kind of, what is the message I want to kind of send, right? We as Apex developers should be extremely proud of the fact that we are value creators throughout the entire business cycles, right? Because of the popularity of this low-code platform, because of the fact that it is backed by one of the best databases in the world. It is a choice. It's a natural choice for the customers in order to be able to, adopt and implement this, right? And it creates enormous value through its simplicity, right? The simplicity, the time to market, the effort it takes to really churn out an application are some of the fantastic features that help us constantly create value, to the customers, right? And especially in the regulatory context, because laws are constantly changing, it is best to look at Apex as a technology for your next application that you're trying to build or trying to integrate with your ERPs, right? So few notes, messages as you're looking out, as you're looking to implement Oracle Apex, is always look to build an integration between ERP and Apex. Now, one of the things we have done here is we are able to use the Apex pages right inside the ERP applications, so that for the customers, it does not look like a different product. It's very seamless experience for the customers. So they don't have to go to another URL, log in and do all of that. So look out for opportunities to coexist your Apex application with their existing application as much as possible. And there's a wonderful support with CSS and everything that you can even make it look like some of those applications, and without end user really experiencing the fact that there are two different applications. Single sign-on is wonderful. There is good OAuth 2 support now. We could, you don't have to recreate all these usernames. There are different ways of authenticating a username and password, or a fact that the user is qualified to log in, right? So look at options. There are Apex authentication. There are custom authentication that you can write. You can use forgot passwords and give recovery options, give one-time passwords. All of these packages can be built in within Apex and implemented. Social sign-in is one of the fantastic functionalities that Apex offers. So if you're building an application which requires a social sign-in, Google, for instance, it's very well supported within Apex. Dual factors, like I said, OTPs, and just to make sure the authentication is correct. Digital signatures. A lot of documents go out today, in Indian context especially, which needs to be digitally signed. Digitally signed is not just putting a JPEG image. It is actually digitally signing it so that the document cannot be tampered with. Anytime you edit a digitally signed document, the link is broken and it cannot be perused anymore. So digital signatures play a very important role in statutory transactions. So using Oracle Apex, you can call a bunch of packages that enable you to digitally sign applications and transmit these documents, right? So keep exploring is the message. There are a lot of wonderful features and functionalities that can be implemented in the statutory context to keep helping the organizations, right? So I will pause here for a second with the final message of social distancing. So this is one of the images that I found really funny. I think will strike the chord with everybody. So that is where we are today in 2020. So, I hope you're all in the safety of your homes, maintaining good social distancing and staying safe. So let's just hope the worst is over and the best will come very soon with the situation that's going on. I thank you for this opportunity. I hope I'm at the top of my time. If there are any questions, I would be happy to take those.
Thank you, Shyam, for your wonderful session. Friends, hope you enjoyed this session to know about how Apex can be used for the to meet the legal complaints. It's good to know Apex is being used to develop a small application to the big, large enterprise level applications. So, thank you once again, Shyam. There are couple of questions for you. Jignesh Patel asked, did you integrate the biometric system with attendance module in payroll system? That's the first question for you.
Yes, I'll take that question. Yes, the answer is yes. There was a biometric system which used the fingerprints, which was using a Microsoft server. It is not a real-time integration. It was a batch integration. So typically what we do, and which is a best practice also, it is always good to process transactions in batches so that you have opportunities to reprocess them. If there are errors, there is sufficient opportunity. Real time may not really be necessary in these cases. Yes, to answer your question, biometric data was taken in the servers, and further the data was dropped into an Oracle table. The validations were applied and then loaded. So there were two options we give customers. There were biometrics, but there are a lot of times biometrics fail. So there would be people working from homes. There would be, biometric did not work. I had, some issue with the machine that day in the site. So we still gave them an option to upload it. So it's a combination of biometrics, which is an automated solution, and also a manual solution.
This next question is, how you have integrated the Apex existing application page without deploying with the different URL? Is it possible to get some document?
No, okay. So what I'm trying to say is, it is a different, so Apex, obviously, when you deploy an Apex, it is a different application. It's a different URL. We have embedded the application within our ERP, right? So just to give you a context, in the last example that I was talking about, this automobile manufacturer, they were using Oracle R12 e-business suite. It is one of the very well-known enterprise applications. So Oracle EBS uses Java forms, right? It's forms applets. So it was easy for us to call a page from within their existing application. So it would be different URL, but when customer clicks that link, it would take them to a different page, as opposed to customers remembering another URL and logging into a different application and trying to enter their data. So they would still log into their ERP, but they can still see that icon which they click, and then that will take them to the Apex application where they can do what they need to do.
Thank you, Shyam. I think we are slightly running over time, so it would be better to have questions at the end of this session. We have other speaker to give this session.
Absolutely.
So there are a couple of questions. Probably we can ask at the end of the session, or we can contact you to our other contacts, email or social media contacts.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shyam.